Welcome to our third in our series, Leadership Lessons in Troubled Times. This free online series is brought to you by the Schulich Executive Education Centre, or SEEC. My name is Robert Lynn, and I am moderator for today's session. Today's topic is Leadership Lessons from Scotiabank. Joining me this afternoon are John Doig and Alan Middleton. John is the Executive Vice President at Scotiabank and Head of Branch Banking. He will be interviewed by Alan Middleton, SEEC's Executive Director. To ask questions, please use the chat function at the bottom of your computer screen. We are videotaping this session for those who are unable to join us at the live session. Now, let's get started. I'd like to hand over to my colleague, Alan Middleton.
So welcome, everybody. And I'm afraid I must start with bad news, but then the good news. The bad news is, unfortunately, because of a bunch of technical problems, you're not going to be able to actually see John Doig, which is only part of the attraction, but is a big part. John, welcome by voice. It's wonderful to have you here.
Alan, thanks for having me, and I apologize for the technical glitch.
No problems. So what we do first is I'm going to talk to John about a series of questions. And then about 15, 20 minutes in, we'll go to my chat box, if I can read it, and take questions from the audience. So you can start putting in your questions now, and I'll look at them a bit later. The great thing about talking to John Doig is his career spans two very important elements of skill. He was the Chief Marketing Officer, both for domestically for Canada and then globally for Scotia, before he took on this overall role at various points in his career as a banker, administrator. So my questions are going to be in sort of two areas. We'll start off with some brand questions, and then we'll move to some more general leadership questions. So John, let me go with the obvious brand question is, you've been so successful in generating a strong, multifaceted brand for Scotia. What do you see as the challenges for both Scotia, but also your clients, both businesses and individuals, going through this process, and more importantly, coming out of the process? What should brands be thinking about and doing?
Well, yeah, it's a big question, Alan, and I'd say from a Scotiabank standpoint, you know, financial services in general, the brand has to resonate with the word trust, and you know, we work very hard to earn that trust with our customers here and around the world, and we have 100,000 employees in which we need to connect with customers to do that. So in times of crisis, which we find ourselves today, you know, there was no playbook on the wall for this one. And you know, we collectively made decisions to, particularly in Canada, to remain as accessible, open as possible for our customers, and to be there in their moment of uncertainty, their moment of you know, questioning. I mean, people, you know, joke and say, well, you know, in the crisis, we got food, water, and we need money. So the last thing we need is to have our ABMs out of cash. The last thing we need is someone needing advice on whether they should take a mortgage deferral, not being able to access their advisor. So that trust piece, the trusted advisor component, is super important for our brand. And we made a decision very early on that we were going to continue to give access to consumers as much as possible, keeping our staff safe.
You get most of your branches open.
Yeah, we've you know, we've had 98% of our branches open. I mean, again, today, like yesterday, we have two branches that are closed. One is closed because it's in Fort McMurray and there's lots of floods, and we have one closed in on a university campus because the university is closed. Yeah. So we have no COVID-related closures. We have several staff off. We have shrunk hours a little bit. But by and large, we've kept the branches open, giving customers access, and it's proving to be appreciated by the customers. You know, our NPS scores are quite strong for the last 6 weeks.
Yeah. One of the things we talked about in earlier versions of this is, at this stage, it helps making banking move from being an institution that not necessarily everybody loves to personal because their branches and who they talk to online are talking to them. And you've obviously built that in to your thinking about how Scotia should go forward.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, when I've been in a bank for 22 years, and just over half of that time was in marketing in some capacity, and the other half is back in frontline businesses. But the thing that, as the marketer, I never try to convince people that they should love their bank, just that they should love their banker.
Yeah.
And it is a lot easier to have that relationship with the person who you see, the person who you talk to on the phone, the person who you go to when you need advice. And you think about a small business customer. Small business customers needs a good accountant, a good lawyer, and a good banker.
Yeah.
You click those three boxes, that person is going to start being set up, assuming their business is a good one, they're in good hands. Trusted advisors across those three disciplines are super important. And Canadians, as I always say, they tend to not like their bank, but love their banker.
Yeah.
And being open in communities big and small right across this country during this crisis, it is super important that we have, our face is there for our customers.
Excellent. Take that a step forward, because this struggle that most companies are in, including a lot of your business clients, between the economics and the reality of being able to afford things and make sure you've got a viable business, but getting the balance of how you look after your staff and your customers, that's a difficult balance to keep going. How are you working up to help, particularly your small, medium enterprise clients through this process? Yeah. Any thoughts about what they should be doing with their brands?
Yeah, well, no, totally. I mean, this is it's a big challenge, obviously. And, we have a service economy and services are shut down. And that is going to be a rough road back. Having said that, governments, federal and provincial, federal in particular, working with banks, which I think is a good sign. I mean, we, our leadership team have been at the table with government to help design these programs. They say, here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to do it. And we say, okay, but you need to execute this and access a certain customer base. And, we talk about size of employee base, payrolls and all those sort of things. And we give them our data to help, I think, structure what has appeared to be a pretty successful, and I'm focusing on the Canadian Emergency Business Account, the $40,000 loans that the government has facilitated for small businesses. I mean, that's from a $30,000 payroll to a $1.5 million payroll.
Yeah.
It's outside of the 75% wage premium, wage subsidy that you can get from the government, and it pays bills for a small business for a period of time. Mm-hmm. And then the other, the BDC, the bank, the Business Development Bank loans for commercial, bigger small business and commercial customers are there, and the bank has take some risk, and the government backstops the majority. Again, those things help. It helps tremendously when kind of the institution of government and the institution of financial services work together on this and actually come up with things that are seemingly good for the customers. In addition to that, obviously, we've done a bunch of different programs for deferrals. Many of our small business customers are great retail customers as well. So they have a small business loan, but they also have a mortgage, some credit card debt. And so lowered interest rates on cards, and defer the mortgage payment. It allows for cash flow to be moved around. And lots of people will say, yeah, but you're still earning interest on it. And we said, yes, we are, but we're also putting plans in place of each of these customers. Say, once you're back on your feet, a small one-time payment can get you back to where you were, the trajectory you are to pay that thing off, in the term that you thought. So we're not doing these things to grab another 3 days interest. We're doing these things to help our customers cash flow today, and we'll work with them and give them advice to get them back on track, in months 6 and 7.
Yeah, you've touched on something that came up with our previous 2 sessions with the head of a large pharmaceutical company, Roche, and with the head of Humber River Hospital. which is across silo and across function, across business sector cooperation. Government to not-for-profits to business seems to be part of the solution in this process. That the less we think of ourselves as silos, we just do things for our business or just do things in our department, that's a danger zone. Whereas if we can reach across the different areas, we can achieve more. You talk a little bit about that. You mentioned the relationship with the government, but also you have very important suppliers, staff, and your customers. So these linkages become really important.
No, 100%. And I mean, we've got many customers today, business customers, that have zero revenue coming in.
Yeah.
And I can think of, a handful of them that, we've banked for longer than I can remember.
Yeah.
And we've been with them in good times and in bad. And we're going to continue to stick with them. Taking on new customers in this situation that are in trouble is tough. No doubt about it. But the ones we have, and the ones that have been with us for a long time, we will continue to work with them. And I think, like anything, it's working with the government is an obvious thing. Working with regulators, I mean, we don't have a choice. But I mean, why would we ever want to not work hand in hand with government and regulators? And early days, a lot of conversations through the Canadian Bankers Association with our peers, just to give people a heads up as to hey, what's happening in a rural area where a particular bank can't actually staff their branch, and because there's implications. I mean, a lot of government checks going out right now. Government, for wage subsidy or for the business loans and things.
Yeah.
And we're working really hard to get people on CRA direct deposit. It's amazing how many people don't have it. And we've built a lot of infrastructure to deliver that. And that benefits the government next year tax time. It benefits the customer because now it's direct deposit and it'll be simpler. And quite frankly, it's good for us. And we avoid massive lineups at month end in our branches. You don't want to have 50 people in line in this day and age.
Yeah.
So a lot of that work we've been pretty aggressive on. I think you've read a lot about what we've done over the last 5 years. We spent $10 billion on digitizing the bank.
Yeah.
And people, shareholders would say, "Oh, I'm not sure what that is." Well, now people go, "Oh, I get it."
Know.
Yeah, I get it. And our subsidiary Tangerine, fully digital bank, hasn't missed a beat.
Yeah, absolutely. Just switching on to the people in your branches and online for a second, because one of the other themes that comes up is what kind of things should we step up during this time? Because although they're not frontline workers in the sense of the healthcare system, they're still frontline in very real senses. So how do you, things you and I have talked about before, for instance, you talk about stepping up communication. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'd say from there's a couple of components, right? One, we've invoked a business disaster program in place, so we have people all over the world working in different locations, working at home, working in remote areas. But when you're a branch banker, you can't do a transaction for at the teller wicket if you're not there.
Yeah.
And so we've been working really hard to communicate with our customers about, hey, these are these transactions you can do at home and feel comfortable doing them at home on your PC or on your phone, or you can do these ones at the ABM. And if you have to come in, here's the ones you probably should come in. So we've done lots of that communication, but also, we're bankers. We're not doctors. But we have a chief medical officer on staff now. Well, we put him on staff in January, and gave us great counsel on how this could unfold. And unfortunately, it's unfolded kind of the worst case scenario, right, where everything shut down and the distancing is required and all of those sort of things. But that has helped us tremendously. I have a call every day with the entire country. I have a call after this one. It was around 3:30, and there'll be 1,800 people on the call.
Wow! Wow!
And it's a moderated call where we do a little bit of a present out, but also we open it up for an hour of Q&A. And we'll have medical professionals on that call. We'll have small business experts. We'll have commercial folks, and we'll be able to address many, many concerns. So it's a weird kind of environment where by separating and pushing us away from each other, we've actually had to work to get closer in many other ways. And I apologize again for the video not working here. There's a security glitch with Zoom and my bank software. But we have Skype and Microsoft Teams, and those two platforms, every day we're on them. And just before this, I kicked off a sales meeting in Alberta for our Prairie Region head. And it was good to see all the faces, but I was thinking through, if I was to do that in 6 months ago, I would have probably flown in yesterday. Right? I met some customers, which was great. And I'd have a couple other meetings, but you have to be able to pivot and I had my 15 minutes to kind of talk about key points and then move on. I'll follow up with Sloan, who runs our Prairie Region, later tonight, and we'll figure out what the call looks like tomorrow.
I've got a question coming in on this topic from Ms. Jones. How, in addition to these communications, how do you expect your people, the branch managers, the heads of the centres, to keep their staff engaged and committed? Because there's so much pressure, especially if you've got families and the kids aren't at school and this kind of stuff. How do you help them?
So I mean, there's probably 3 or 4 components to that answer. And I think first and foremost, you have to ensure that you're doing everything you can to keep them safe.
Yeah.
Right. If for the obvious reason, I mean, you need to provide a safe environment for your employees. And in this situation, I can't tell you the millions that we have spent buying plexiglass.
Yeah.
And then quickly fitting it into each of our 960 branches environment in a fashion that doesn't make it look like you and I went to the hardware store. Right? And so I think that the safety piece is important. I have listen, I never thought I'd be on that many phone calls about purchasing sanitizer.
Yes.
Right? And I can get you sanitizer from anywhere now. And then we also bring in the medical professionals to talk to. So we have nurse practitioners who on a regular basis speak to every one of our 52 districts across the country, letting branch staff ask questions about what if, again, making accommodations for those who are compromised in some way from the whether it be some previous asthma issues or just some immunocompromised individuals, where we make provisions to put them in a place that is safer, or quite frankly let them work from home. Our contact centers right now are probably 60-70% work from home. Our collections groups, which is now Scotia Helps, because we're it's not about collecting right now, it's about getting people to take the deferrals. They're probably running 80% work from home, because those are normal big campuses with large volumes of people sitting 3 feet apart from each other for 8 hours a day. Can't have that. Can't have it.
John, an impossible question, and I apologize for it.
Okay.
but can you see this sustaining? So let's say we get the vaccines and things are back to normal, but the world has changed. So do you see this online presence and online communication being a much bigger part of the future of commerce?
So, listen, I think you and I had this conversation, and I took, as I often do, your wise words away. You were very much avoiding the cliche new normal.
Yes.
And it resonated really well with me, because there's nothing normal about this.
Yeah.
in our world. I mean, we're social creatures. We crave interaction, and as someone who would walk into a branch typically and shake 20 people's hands, and pat some people on the back and a couple high fives. I walk into branches. I was in a branch this morning, and we're all 6 feet apart. I take a step forward, everyone takes a step back.
Yeah.
It's real. There's nothing normal here.
Yeah.
And so what I'd say to you is many of these things will pass. I mean, this is not a financial crisis. This is a health crisis. And, the brilliant folks who are working on this, we'll solve it and it will pass. But I do think, if I talk to you about, 5 days a week, I'm on a national call. I've got the branch managers and above on a call this afternoon. I'll have small business advisors. I'll have financial advisors, all separate calls, very specific for their craft. We will do more of that because the feedback we're getting is absolutely incredible. The employee engagement numbers are up. And it's because, quite frankly, we're like, I'm having experts answer questions on whether you should wear gloves or not wear gloves, and then I'm also answering questions as to, can we get this 4-year rate approved for a customer, and honestly, the amount of comfort that gives the field, and quite frankly, then gives me as someone who looks at this nationally, the engagement is you have to have great engagement or you're dead.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in this, we've got people, childcare is a challenge, right? School's closed, it's a challenge, no question about it. So we've added additional personal obligation days. We've given people 10 extra days. We've given them 5 extra vacation days. We've done all these things. Is it enough? Hopefully this thing will fix itself before it runs out. But it is you have to make concessions, and you have to do that in a way that takes care of your staff, so that they can take care of your customers.
Yeah. I have a question on that from Shabir, who says, how do you measure that? How do you make sure that your staff are actually stepping up to those expectations?
Yeah, well, it's a great question, because there's two ways to answer the question. One is, many of the staff are, so we'll have key performance indicators for each job and each activity, and it rolls up into a branch, and so you see how a branch is performing on many different levels. Customer sat, which is NPS. We have employee sat, which is just basically employee NPS. And so those things we can trend and track, and we have been tracking for years and years and years. The customer pulse, we call it C-Pulse, customer pulse scores are higher in the last 6 weeks than they've ever been. And so that says to me that we did the right thing by staying open.
Yep.
It also says to me that the staff that are there are actually showing a whole lot of empathy, and they're listening to their customers, and they're giving the customers what they need, and that's advice. So it's a measure that we need to continue to track. If I wasn't on calls, talking to people and answering their questions about, as I said, gloves or mortgage rates, there might be a little bit of a, where's he? Where is he sitting somewhere in in a safety zone, and I'm out here.
Yeah.
If I think it's okay to have people come into the branches and we're giving them proper protection with whether it be plexiglass shields or office shields or the social distancing, we've got, as I joked to you before, Alan, I mean, the millions of dollars we've spent on plexiglass and stickers for the floor, indoors and outdoor stickers, about keeping people apart, and the millions of dollars we've spent on sanitizer. These things need to be, that is moving ahead, probably not going to go away. And I'd say if we didn't do those things, then I wouldn't expect anyone to show up. If we didn't bring in, you don't want a banker dishing out advice on health.
No.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I won't do that. I will listen to the experts, and we call in the medical officer and a nurse practitioners, and we let them answer the questions.
Yeah.
And I think that gives people a lot of comfort. There's still things out there that are unknown, but as information comes, we release it, transparent, timely, and just keep communicating.
Question from Jennifer Fang. Good question, difficult one. Yeah, sorry. Have you had to change operational procedures? And I don't mean the material you've talked about for health, but have there been things that in this world you've recognized that no longer makes sense as a process, and it may not make sense for the process for the future? Now, I think what she's getting at is have we had to change things, and some of those changes are not directly related to health, but a new way of working that we can take forward for the future, which would be good learning for businesses.
100%. So yeah, Jennifer, fantastic question. And the answer is absolutely. When we started this review in this crisis mode, one of the first things we said is, okay, how many of our product, services, solutions can I deliver without having the customer in front of me, right? And the number was something like 80%.
Wow.
And then the question started coming, well, why can't we do these other 20%? Oh, well, because that renewal is a little this, we need this signature, we need that, we need this. And so what we started doing is pushing aggressively into saying, okay, well, what if I use secure email? And what if I use DocuSign? And what if I'm able to do these things? And I can take a population who might be older people. It might be people who have some compromises in their health, who don't want to come in and or who want to be out, quite frankly. And so we've been able to change those processes and policies, quite frankly, to allow for more remote. It's all secure, but more remote confirmations. And I know it sounds obvious, but it's one of those things that there was no pressing need to do it. No one had a complaint about it, but now we said, well, you can't have this, right? I want to, if I can do this over the phone and everyone's just happy, and I have the proper documentation from a regulatory standpoint, we've built a lot of that, and that's not going back. Right. That's just going to give optionality for our advisors and our customers in the future. Yeah. So tons and tons of that for sure. And even the other side of it too is, for frontline workers, healthcare workers, there's a they need to come into the bank, and sometimes you don't want them in your bank. Because of what they do, but the last thing you want to do is say you can't come in because you're taking care of us. Right. So what we've done is we've streamlined. They have a number, so there's a phone number that you call, and their average wait time is about 30 seconds. Wow. And it has been a relief, because I come home after a 12-14 hour shift. Do I really want to go to the bank? Yeah. But I have to take care of a mortgage renewal. I have to take care of my GIC. I have to take care of this situation, and they're able to do that through our contact center. And then there's a little follow up with secure email afterward, and their advisor will reach out to them. So we've changed the flow. And I look at that and go, we also did it for seniors. Yeah, and we did it in an automated fashion for seniors. Basically, they punch in their debit card information, and we just look at the date of birth, and then it routes to a different queue. All sounds really simple. It is, but we never did that before. Yeah, we should. Interesting. So one lesson I'm drawing from what you're saying: use this stage as a test case for what don't we need to be doing any longer, or what other ways are there that we can do it, even for the future. 100%. Frees up capacity to do other value add work, that as opposed to quote administrative. Yeah. Last question, John. I described instead of a bell curve of how people work, we kind of have two extremes now. We got people in jobs who seem to be working a lot harder, and clearly you are. So a lot of hours going into this, a lot of pressure on your staff, and then unfortunately there are people out there who've been laid off who are not working. So in that environment of the hard working side of the business, how do you make sure people get break? How do you take a break? It's we used to have back in 2006, I think we launched our tagline, "You're richer than you think."
Yeah.
And you may or may not remember the previous one. It was life, money, balance both.
Absolutely.
and while "You're richer than you think" is the winner, a clear winner, and still remains, life, money, balance both had a little bit of reality baked into that thing.
Yeah.
And it was the precursor to become "You're richer than you think." And I think that still stands today. I mean, you need to. The joke on many of the calls is, "Yeah, I work every day that ends in a day." And it's, you sit there and everyone kind of laughs about it, but this bleeds into that, and time zones kind of become irrelevant. And then, hey, we've got a problem, the system crashed, we're going to call on Sunday. And this becomes kind of, well, that's how you have to do it. And for some things, obviously you have to do it that way. But there's also, we have 100,000 employees around the world.
Yeah.
Delegation is really important.
Yeah.
And I've got, so in Canada, let's call it, I'll have 15,000 people. So there's bunch of part-timers in there too, but let's call it 15,000 people. There's a lot of really smart people in that group who can do a lot of things when given the opportunity. And I think that this time has allowed us to call on people who we wouldn't necessarily call on to do things because we didn't have to do those things. And then the other side of it is delegating and allowing people to, there's a call today. As I said, I have my call with all the branch managers, and there's a call in the middle of that with my boss. And I told him, actually, I can't make it. I'm going to send a couple of delegates. And it's one of those things that probably wouldn't have happened, 3 months ago. I would have been able to, I wouldn't be on a phone call for 1,800 people, and I could have moved a meeting. And now it's like, no, you just delegate, put people there. Nothing's going to break. Nothing's going to fall down. We've got really, really strong people. We've got bright people. We have people who want to learn. Let them.
Yeah. Excellent, John. So one of the themes I'm getting, and I'm going to ask you just to summarize in the question, is, use the time to look at your organizational processes. Do we need them? Are there better ways of doing it? Trust your people, listen to them, flatten the hierarchies, care about them as human beings, care about your customers as human beings walking in the branch, not just a transaction. John, as last comments, what would you like to leave us with about your learning over the last 2 or 3 months in this process?
Well, it's a lot of what you just summarized there. I mean, this is, your job in normal times is to create, high performing teams. And those teams, in my world, in this job, are focused on customers' financial transactions and financial future. And I've said to people many times in my shop that, when you sit down with someone and you create a financial plan for them, this thing called the plan, the outcomes unfold over decades, right? And they unfold over decades. Yeah. And they will be tweaked, adjusted, but that base plan and the goals, whether a young family starting out, looking for a house, kids going to school, they'll get the house paid off, they may want a vacation property, who knows how it all works out. But my point is it unfolds over decades. And so when you take a long-term view of this, we need to pivot when we need to pivot. I mean, financial crisis in 2008, that was a bit of a learning for us. Now that was, in some ways the banks did it to themselves, particularly the ones in the US, not in Canada. But we bore a lot of pain because of that situation. This is not a financial crisis. This is a health crisis. It will pass. But along the way, we've been able to pivot and we've been able to learn and somewhat quickly innovate. And it's not perfect, but you can deliver us an 80% solution in a couple of weeks. Then you can nail this thing down in a couple of months. It'll look brilliant. And so I think that it is about being super flexible, super nimble.
Excellent. John Doig, thank you very much. To our audience, before I go back to Robert, Thank you very much. I'm sad you can't see him because he's as good looking as he is articulate. But back to Robert.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, everyone, for attending today's session. Please feel free to join us for our next session 1 week from today. That's May 13th at 1 p.m. We have 2 experts on branding. Ian Gordon, who is the Senior Vice President for Loblaw Brands, as well as David Kincaid, the founder and managing partner of Level 5 Strategy. They will discuss the future of business and branding post-COVID-19. Thank you again to everyone for attending this afternoon. A special thank you to John and Alan. Have a great day.
Thank you all.
Thank you, John.
That's
Thank
good.
you.
Anytime.